It is Tuesday, and we are set to talk with the doc as Dr. Tim McKnight is in this morning. And we kind of turned this about brain power. So I don't know where we begin. We think of, brain symptoms with Alzheimer's and dementia, but are there other things that can happen? Can you just kind of need some exercise for your brain?
Yeah, it's actually a good tie-in from some of the other topics we've had in recent weeks. So the first thing I think when people think of how do I enhance my memory is you see all these commercials, and you mentioned that earlier. So it looks promising. There's all these things that you can take, and they can make a very convincing marketing kind of a plea that, hey, this is how you help your brain power. Mm-hmm. And the truth is as you look at the studies that have been done on each of these supplements, they've been small studies, and they haven't been convincing that in real life they really make a difference for most people. So I always tell people when you hear a claim about a supplement, you have to really be cautious that you don't just buy hook, line, and sinker. And maybe you can try it for a month. Get a bottle, take the supplement, see if you're convinced there's a difference, and then don't take it and see if the previous condition returns.
And there is a whole world of vitamins and supplements. I mean, it's almost unending.
It is. Curcumin, choline, ginseng, ginkgo biloba, vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acids, L-theanine, B vitamins. There's so many of them. And again, we've mentioned this before. Where do these come from? Well, it comes from understanding brain chemistry and biochemistry, and we know that the vitamin E, omega-3s, and the B vitamins, they're all essential for good brain function. They're part of the biochemistry. Choline is another one. L-theanine is another one. We know that curcumin and turmeric are really good antioxidants, and we need antioxidants in our bodies. So that's the basis of where this starts. But how you get it into the brain, into the part of the brain where it works, once you swallow it, it's a long, complicated distance and a travel through your liver, into the bloodstream, out of the bloodstream, into the cell, into the right part of the cell, with just the right conditions for it to work. So in reality, these really don't work that well. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a firm believer in supplements, and I think there are some conditions and there are reasons that we should take supplements. But for the brain, I think most people are going to be disappointed if they're looking at enhanced cognition and better recall and just faster with their word searches. So there's a lot of other things that I think people need to be thinking about. First of all, is brain exercises. There's exercises for everything, right?
Right.
And I tell people when you're exercising your brain, you need to exercise both halves. The left side of the brain, which is the calculating side, it's the one we think with. The right side of the brain is the creative side. It's the side of the brain that we invent or we do artistic things. So whether it's drawing or painting or playing an instrument or anything that's creative is the right side of the brain. You have to use that side. And when you use that side with the left side of your brain, we're using them both, then there's a real cross-link of both sides of the brain, and your brain function and cognition improves. It's really interesting to watch these young kids who are geniuses on the piano. They're exercising the right side of the brain, but then when you look at what are they academically gifted at, they're usually really good at math, because playing an instrument is a mathematical kind of a calculation. So it's important at any age to, maybe you're retired now, get the paintbrush back out, or start learning to play an instrument or do something that's creating. Maybe you're trying to write poetry or something, take an art class, whatever. But you got to do both sides of the brain. And the calculation side, it's real easy after retire to kind of sit back and take it easy and not exercise the brain, but continue to use things, exercises, whether it's word searches or crossword puzzles or whatever, anything to get your brain firing is critical.
I wondered about the people of all ages during the pandemic who were just kind of stuck at home a lot. I mean, that could have
Oh yeah,
started to lead to
yeah,
that.
and what happens is, especially in those settings, you get really anxious as you think about things you can't control, and that leads to stress. And cortisol is a stress hormone, and cortisol will slow down brain function. Lack of sleep also goes with stress, and the type of sleep you need for good brain function is REM sleep. REM sleep is when you're dreaming, and dreaming is when you're taking all the information of the day and you're filing it away at nighttime so that you have a place to go back and find it later. So you definitely want to be able to get good quality sleep. And of course, you don't really know if you're getting REM sleep sometimes. I have a Fitbit that supposedly tells me how much time I'm in REM sleep. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it's kind of a gauge that I use.
Not hooked up to your eye, though.
No, no. But getting good quality sleep is important for any aspect of health, and for brain health, that's also very true.
I noticed you said something about sugar intake, too.
Sugar intake, that's a really good one, because we talked a couple weeks ago about Alzheimer's disease is labeled now as type 3 diabetes. And we also talked about insulin resistance. They're kind of linked. So when you have insulin resistance, you're making too much insulin because you're trying to get sugar, glucose into your cells, and it won't go into your cells without more and more insulin. So with insulin, you're making fat, you're getting more inflamed. But when you can't get glucose into your brain because you have insulin resistance, your brain cells aren't firing right. They're not getting the fueling, the energy they need. So if you're diabetic, control your insulin, control your blood sugar the best you can, and try to reduce that insulin resistance. So that's key. Another topic that is very well documented that I love is hormones. Hormone replacement therapy. Thyroid in particular is a really critical one. Almost everybody I will find that most people are at least moderately insufficient in thyroid. And as we replace thyroid, that helps their cognition. When you have really low thyroid, especially women, they'll lose more hair than they should. They'll have dry skin, brittle nails, be tired. Men will have the same thing, but they're not really aware of the hair loss like women are. But
because we lose it anyway.
Yeah, we lose it anyway. But cognition, brain fog, and not remembering the words as quickly as you want to, and just not having the same focus, that's a real common symptom of hypothyroid or low thyroid. And people attribute those things to so many other issues. They never really think about thyroid being an issue, but that's easy to replace. We also know that optimal levels of estrogen for women and testosterone for men are really good for brain health. And this isn't something you start in your 70s as you're starting to have cognitive problems. You optimize this your entire life. And I see a lot of people in their 40s and 50s and obviously 60s who are starting to have issues with it. So that's something that needs to be considered. And that's very well documented. Hormone optimization has a much lower incidence of Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, which is another type of disease, another type of a process. Exercise. Everything improves with exercise. I mentioned the cognitive exercises with the right and left side of the brain, but getting blood flow to the brain because you're exercising is critical. It's easy. Maintaining an ideal body weight is important because the more overweight you are, the more inflamed you are, and when you're inflamed, your nervous system is just not firing the way it should. It's going to be slower. It's going to be less efficient. And then we want to try to stay away from neurotoxins, and neurotoxins are everywhere in the environment. And we have to be careful of things like lead and arsenic. Now, you're not gonna purposely take arsenic, but you can get exposures to arsenic in several different sources. You've got to be careful. You got to be careful with lead toxicity. Fluoride is another neurotoxin in higher amounts. I don't think it's a good idea to use fluoridated water. I think there's a lot of concern about that particular mineral being toxic to the brain and other tissues. PCBs, the polychlorinated biphenyls, they're in plastic products. Pesticides that are on your food, DDT and others, manganese. There's so many different environmental toxins out there, toluenes and these other organic acids that if you're working with chemicals or in a lab, you can be exposed to these. All these things are toxic to the nerves. And I often wonder, it's a little bit off topic, but I see people with neuropathy, and they're not diabetic, but yet their legs hurt and they ache and they have restless leg. Where does this come from? Or where does the pain from fibromyalgia come from? I really think there's a link with those nervous conditions and the muscle conditions of fibromyalgia with these neurotoxins. So it's hard to eliminate those once they're there, but the point is, be careful of your exposures and try to become aware of those things. So there's a lot that we can do to enhance our brain health, but it mostly comes back to a healthy lifestyle, an ideal body weight, eating plenty of vegetables and nuts and seeds, and healthy, just the foods from the produce section of the store, getting good quality sleep, getting good quality exercise, optimizing your hormones. And that also happens when you have an ideal body weight, but good exercise. And the last one that I want to make mention of here is a good support system. So there was a study done several years ago that said, what's most predictive of longevity? Is it are we looking at smoking as a risk factor? If you smoke, we know you're going to probably shorten your life by 10 years on average if you're a smoker. But we looked at other things like alcohol consumption, street drugs, overuse of medications, obesity, family history, and all these things. What is the most predictive of a long life? And the one that just blew me away, that was the number one predictor of longevity, is social support systems and interactions with others. People to get out and to interact with other people. And just like we're having a stimulating conversation right now, all of us need to be doing that, and maybe you're somewhat of a shut-in, but get out with a group of friends or go to a church or some other organization, some other activity where you start expressing yourself and you're listening to others and learning. That's also really, really important. It also gives us a reason to want to be here and to contribute and to help other people. So all those things are important for brain health. And probably the least of which is the one that we turn to most, which is supplements, because, hey, that's a quick fix. Quick fixes usually don't work. So it's a healthy lifestyle, physically, emotionally, socially. All those things have to be part of your toolbox.
Is it a good idea, if I think I may be having a problem, to come to the doctor and say, gosh, I wonder about this. Can you do a blood test and maybe help identify?
We can do blood tests to look at inflammation in your body. We can do CAT scans of the brain to see what the brain looks like. But usually what we're seeing on imaging of the brain is after it's pretty apparent that there's already an issue with your memory. And so we want to be proactive and try to act on these things earlier. Most people in their 30s and 40s are busy with their careers and their families, and they're not really thinking about their health. When the kids move away and you're getting ready for retirement and you're starting to have the knee replacements, these other issues, that's when people start really thinking about it. But you really want to think about it at the age that most people don't.
Yeah.
But it's never too late to improve your health. It's never too late to make these changes. So I think the main thing is just for people to be aware.
All right. Thank you, as always. Very good stuff.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you again next week. That's Dr. Tim McKnight. As we talk with the doc this morning here on the BT Morning Show.